Hello everyone, and I'm Autobot Sonic the Telltale Gamer, bringing latest and Telltale games, Transformers, and more. Welcome back to another episode of Transformers Cyberverse Reviews, where today we're going to be looking at Transformers Cyberverse Season 3, Episode 22, Journey to the Valley of Repugnus. Now, I gotta say, I will say though, out of all of the Rescue Windblade episodes, I will say this is probably my least favorite out of them all, but it's not a bad episode, hardly not. It's not like a 5 out of 10 or anything like that, kind of like, the Season 2 finale, Crossroads. No, this is a good episode, but just, in my opinion, it was the one I enjoyed the least out of them all. But I will say this episode is without a doubt the most beautiful episode ever in Cyberverse since I want to say Wiped Out back in Season 2. This is without a doubt such a beautiful episode. Like, literally the first, 3 to 4 minutes of this episode, honestly, the prettiest I've ever seen Cyberverse. So we're going to go ahead and see everything this episode did right and what it did wrong. Now, episode 22 starts off with Bumblebee and Grimlock hanging out inside the Energon rivers, where they're now totally fixed up after Cheetor restarted Cybertron back in the Battle of Cybertron Part 4. And if you remember, this is also where the Energon Tar Pits were back in Battle for Cybertron Part 3, where Hot Rod killed Drip by dragging himself and him both into the tar pits, and that's where Hot Rod ended up being trapped in there for hundreds of years. So, but now that Cheetor's revived Cybertron, we see the whole river has just been restored, and it's really, really beautiful. Like, the whole place is pitch black except for the river, which is illuminating the whole river area, like the valley, I guess you want to call it that. And there are these few, bioluminescent plants that are sprouting from the ground and just hanging off the walls. It's honestly, such a beautiful scene. I really love the design here. So while Bumblebee and Grimlock are down here, they're talking to Hot Rod, trying to figure out where the next piece of Windblade is. And Grimlock said, it's so beautiful, why would Hot Rod not want to come down here? And then when Hot Rod explains how he got stuck under there for hundreds of years after getting stabbed by Drift back in Battle for Cybertron Part 3, Grimlock understands, so they decide to go ahead and just start to look for Windblade's memory fragments here. But one thing that's interesting here is that when Hot Rod talks to Bumblebee and Grimlock in this in this scene, first off, Hot Rod's voice is very similar back to how he was in the start of this season and Season 1 and 2. It doesn't have that little gravelly, it doesn't have that graveled, edgy tone like he did as, I guess I'm going to call him Dark Hot Rod in the Quintessent arc. He had that gravelly voice back in, I believe it was Enemy Line, but every other episode we've seen Hot Rod now after the Quintessent arc, he's back to, Surfer Dude Hot Rod. And so I don't know if this was, a developer oversight by Boulder Media that maybe they plan to have Hot Rod keep his black color scheme for Enemy Line and then have him switch back to the red color scheme. But I don't know, it just seems kind of weird now that Hot Rod's just back talking like he did in Seasons 2 and 3 when literally he's just been talking, so edgy, for the past 15 episodes almost. It just seems a little weird in my opinion. So I'd take maybe a half point off for that, even though it's not anything really big. Maybe I'll take quarter of a point off, not anything really big. But anyway, Bumblebee is using the scanner that Chromia gave him back in Thunder Howl, and as he's looking for it, he notices that the Windblade fragment is actually under them, but the river of Energon is blocking their way. So instead, Grimlock tries to make a tunnel just by stomping the ground, hoping that it will cause a hole big enough for Bumblebee and Grimlock to fall through to go underground. But as they're doing that, Bumblebee and Grimlock end up getting knocked into the river, and they end up going down the river, falling down a big Energon waterfall down the stream. And that takes them to where the area where Repugnus was back in Battle for Cybertron Part 4, where we saw they tried to eat Bumblebee for his Energon, but Cheetor saved them. So we'll catch up. The episode basically splits into 2 parts here. We have one part of Bumblebee split up in one area, while Grimlock is with Repugnus's people. But we'll catch up with Grimlock later. Right now, we're going to focus on how Bumblebee's doing. So when Bumblebee first arrives at underground, he ends up being woken up in outside this really, really vibrant city. And again, this city is honestly beautiful to look at. Just how lit up it is compared to the very dark cave setting that they're currently in. And I'm just a sucker for just bright lights like that. It makes my serotonin levels go up, and I absolutely really love this. But while Bumblebee's admiring the city, one of the bugs that looks like Repugnus, I don't know if they had an actual name, but they refer to them as bugs in the episode, so I'm just going to call them that. One of those bugs sneaks up behind Bumblebee and tries to bite him, wanting to eat his Energon, as we saw back in Battle for Cybertron Part 4. But as Bumblebee's getting attacked by it, some other Cybertronian ends up like knocking the bug away with some like taser stick or taser rod, and so that bot explains to be that they're at this big city where they're essentially composed of so-called Energon masters. That basically the whole civilization, the whole city basically revolves around Energon, and this like again like if this episode definitely has a real social like vibe to it, where it's sort of the rich versus poor. I feel like that's the point of this episode, and it does it in a very obvious way, but it's entertaining to a degree. So Bumblebee ends up being showed around the city by this guy Bumblebee stating that he needs to find Grimlock. So the bot recommends Bumblebee to go check out this party that's where all the Energon Masters go to hang out. And you can tell it's clearly like great, very socialite, Great Gatsby inspired. You have opera singers, like this one girl's playing the harp, like a Cybertronian harp. Everyone's just drinking Energon, these fancy glasses. There's even like an Energon donation machine where everyone who needs to donate if they want to go to the party, like the next party that the leader of the city has. And so the city's run by this dude named, I think his name's Affluus, which wow, a little bit on the nose there, Boulder Media, if you really can't be subtle with your names there. But Affluus's party, essentially, that they have this Energon donation machine where everyone needs to donate to that if they want to go to the next party. So Bumblebee thinks at first that it's some sort of like charity event, that they're giving they're collecting all the Energon to give it to like either like to the bugs or other like less fortunate Cybertronians. But the bot that showed Bumblebee in says that's not the case. So instead, Affluus tells everyone to go outside, and they end up doing like this really pretty water show with Energon, where it's like kind of like, you know, those water shows that they have at like parks and like amusement parks where they have the water spraying about. It reminds me a lot of that. So the Energon spray, it goes all over. They use up all the Energon, like I think it's like 1 million units of Energon they do to pull off this show, and everyone's loving it. Bumblebee's like totally like confused by it, considering they just wasted all that Energon on just the show. And then like everyone just turns to Bumblebee, like that one meme of all like the one meme pic of all the girls just looking at the camera with the red Solo cups. It would just remind me of that a lot. And so that's when Affluus confronts Bee, stating that their whole city revolves around Energon, and that they need to keep it out of like that only they deserve it and no one else, like the bugs. So again, like it's very clear that this is just a rich versus poor episode. And so after that, Affluus talks to Bumblebee, stating that there's this thing that happens where sometimes randomly Cybertronians get the shocks, which is, this seems to be this weird thing that just prevents people from doing certain things. Like I think the harp lady, she's trying to do something, I forget what exactly, but she gets a shock, so she ends up getting bubbled by some other guards. That the bubble gun looks like the one that Wheeljack used back in Secret Science, I believe, in Season 2. They end up taking her away, and so Affluus's guards then come to Bumblebee saying that he needs to leave. So he goes to do that and tries to transform and drive out to try and find Grimlock wherever he went out to. But before he can transform, he ends up getting the shocks as well. And because he has the shocks, the guards arrest Bumblebee and take him to jail as well. And we'll catch up to Bumblebee in a bit, but now we're going to go see how Grimlock's doing. So while Bumblebee is taken away by Affluus's guards, meanwhile Grimlock is stuck inside Repugnus's valley, hence the name of this episode, and he ends up actually running into Repugnus, who is currently running away from a bunch of these, like, looks like big wasp or bee things that are chasing them. And despite being like this hulking Dinobot that's huge compared to these wasps, Grimlock ends up running away from all of them with Repugnus. Eventually it gets to the point where all the Repugnuses and all those bugs end up hiding in these little holes, and there's this really cute moment where Grimlock tries to hide by sticking his head in the pole hole with Repugnus like an ostrich, and that definitely got a good laugh out of me. But eventually the wasp starts stinging at Grimlock, and that angers him to the point where he just scares them. He just starts fighting back, spewing fire at them all and scaring them off. Once he scares all the bugs off, Repugnus emerges, and basically they all thank Grimlock for saving them by offering them a cup of Energon, which Grimlock drinks. But when he learns that all the bugs, that was their last Energon, that the Energon Masters are keeping all the Energon for them, Grimlock decides he's going to help Repugnus and everyone else fight back and take down the Energon Masters. So they lead a charge towards getting out, towards saving Bumblebee. Now back to Bumblebee's side of the story. He's in jail with the Harp Lady and a few other Energon, like, people who look like the other Energon Masters. And so Bee's confused as to why he got the shock. So when he's talking to the Harp Lady, she states that she needed to go do something, but when she tried to do that thing, she ended up getting the shocks. And so Bee surmises also that he got the shocks when he tried to transform. So apparently the shocks is something like either involving just preventing people from doing stuff Affluous doesn't want to do, or just transforming in general, because when Bumblebee's getting thrown into jail, the guard that's talking to him states, or I think Affluous is there with him as well, he states that things can never change and that he wants the city and basically the status quo to remain as is, which, yeah, that's a little dangerously close to how things are politically in today's climate, isn't it? But anyway, at this point, Bumblebee comes to the realization that Affluous just wants power and wants to keep it that way, when he eventually finds another bug that's locked up, and his name is Technicus, and we find out that Technicus was actually the one who created this big shock tower that's basically run off Energon. It's sort of like the source of power for the entire city. So it's at this point that, learning that Technicus, that basically all of the bugs that are outside of the Valley of that outside of the city, are basically the alt modes for the Energon Masters, and that's sort of, basically Affluous was a bug who just wanted to isolate all the dim-witted bugs and keep them away from his, basically, utopia. Bee ends up using his multiversal energy to break him, Technicus, and everyone out of the jail to go and try and destroy the tower. And this is the one time I'm okay with Bumblebee using the multiversal energy, because obviously I don't see any other way Bee could have gotten out of that unless he used the multiversal energy. So I'll let that one slide. So at this point, our two stories collide, with Bumblebee and Technicus heading towards the Energon Tower, while Grimlock and Repugnus's group are heading there as well. And so Grimlock leads Repugnus's group towards the tower they intend on destroying, unknown, not knowing that Bee's going there as well, when Affluous ends up coming there trying to stop Grimlock. But at the same time, Bee comes there as well, announcing to Repugnus, Grimlock, and everyone else that Affluous has been lying to everyone, saying that the tower it doesn't keep out the bugs, it's just to make sure everyone does what Affluous wants. So Bee decides to destroy it by, you guessed it, using the multiversal energy to power up his stinger and basically overload the tower so that it explodes. And this is something I have a problem with, because literally, you have Grimlock right there, Bee. You could have easily just had Grimlock just destroy it. You didn't have to use your multiversal energy to just flex on everyone and overcharge it. I'm just it might just be me, but I'm getting a little sick of the multiversal energy just being a Deus Ex Machina for Bee, similar to how the Allspark was a Deus Ex Machina back in Season 2. But anyway, after the tower's destroyed, all the bugs, like Repugnus, they start turning back into, like, their robot modes, while some people like Affluous and a lot of the other Energon Masters turn into bugs, and basically this sort of disrupts the status quo, and Affluous runs away, just cursing Bee, and so now everyone can get, like, share the Energon, and at the same time, Bee and Grimlock managed to find the next shard of Windblade, which appears to be her chest. And I thought her chest was recovered back in the last episode, Alien Hunt, because it was her wings as well. But apparently, no. That episode, they just got her wings. So this episode, they get her torso. So all that's left now are her left arm and her legs, as far as I know. Unless, like, they need her head as well. But anyway, Grimlock and Bumblebee ends up getting that piece, and that's where the episode ends. So a little bit abrupt in my opinion, and the whole plot for the rest of Search for Windblade wasn't really that important, but it was a very entertaining and also beautiful episode, so I'll give it that. And so that was my review of Transformers Cyberverse Season 3, Episode 22, Journey to the Valley of Repugnus. If I had to rate this episode, I'd probably give it either an 8.5 or a 9 out of 10, maybe an 8 out of 10. This is without a doubt the most beautiful episode of Cyberverse we've seen so far, but the plot was just a little bit bland. I wasn't too fond of Hot Rod's voice just being back to normal all of a sudden, unless that was just an error. And then Bee, again, using the multiversal energy just as a Deus Ex Machina at the end, when Grimlock was right there, just seems a little bit pointless in my opinion. But the rest of it was cool. I will give it that. That's going to be it for this review. I'll be back soon with Episode 23, Rack and Ruin and Ratchet. If you like this review, be sure to like, comment, and of course subscribe, and I will see you guys later. Take it away, Bumblebee.
Bumblebee out.